Now we get to the fun part of this job, which is making sure that you have everything lined up properly. Now if you'll notice up here, you have two 10mm bolts that hold on the tensioner pulley, and then the idler pulley over here. You have your crank pulley, and again, using the heat is what I found that works really well to get the bolt to heat up, but it doesn't hurt the crank. This is just, I mean, warm to the touch, just barely warm to the touch. So you don't have to worry about your seal back in here. There's a seal behind here. You don't have to worry about distorting that because it's so far out. And again, you concentrate the heat on the bolt and the washer so that you're not concentrating it on the harmonic balancer. So nothing ever gets hurt, and I've done it quite a few times. Right there is a little arrow that corresponds to a part on the actual lower cog or pulley, whatever you want to call it. Okay, that's the first one I want to line up. What you're going to want to do is keep your eye right here and right on that mark right there. Now if you look right on the pulley, you'll see a little triangle here, a little triangle up there. Those are the two you want to be in line. And it just so happens that the retainer key that holds harmonic balancer in place is also at top dead. Now let's take it up top to see if that also looks good. As you can see right here, there's a line on the back aluminum plate, and there's a line right there on the timing gear. Okay, and those two. As you see down in here, the alignment mark's there, and it aligns with the mark right here. Now, in theory, we should be safe to take off the timing belt. I have had a couple of jobs, and again, I always assume that this is going to happen, but I have had a couple of jobs where when I took the timing belt off, one of these is still under spring pressure by the valve springs, and it pops it back. In most cases, and I've never actually seen a case that it actually screwed up a valve, but when it pops back, it's actually going to a shut position. It's not actually opening the valve. So you're going to a safer position, but you must make sure that if they do pop like that, that you get these 2 points here and here lined back up, and these 2 points lined up with here and here. There is no point at which if this is over one, it's going to be okay. It's not. It must be lined up, and I can't stress that enough. Must be lined up with the points here and down there. Now, this is thread locker. They make red, blue, they're of different strengths. When I am putting the bolts back in for the timing belt tensioner, I use a little bit of thread locker on it. The reason why is because if those bolts back off of this engine for any reason whatsoever, it will break the aluminum housing that they're attached to, and then you got a whole bunch of different problems. Not to mention you'll be replacing all the valves, and most likely either having to have the block welded up, or you'll have to put a new engine in it. So a very little bit of extra precaution here goes a long way. Now the next step is the water pump replacement. When you're replacing a water pump, it is a good precaution to go ahead and take the time to put your drain bucket and an extra wide catch on top of the drain bucket, because this is always a messy job and you don't want to lose this. You don't want to make a mess on the floor, but also for the environmental aspect of it, you want to recapture all of that antifreeze. Just like I said, take the precautions necessary to catch it all so that you don't, one, have to work in a mess, two, hurt the environment. At this point, we've gotten the tensioner down there. We've gotten that torqued down to 9 foot-pounds, both these bolts, this one and this one. The pin is still in it. Don't forget to pull that when you finish up. The new tensioner assembly requires that you reuse the bushing, which is this part, and that actually slides up into the back here. Now I will be putting a little bit of oil on it, just because I like to, not an excessive amount. And the reason you don't want to put an excessive amount is because you don't want that oil, because it's a petroleum-based product, to get on the timing belt itself. Okay, I literally just take a couple of drops from the dipstick, tap it on, and leave it there. That way it has a little bit of extra lubrication other than what it came with. Now, it requires you to reuse the bolt. This is what you have to use, and you're gonna have to put some thread locker on it. And then that gets put right down here. Sorry if my arm shadows out the light. I have a huge crew helping me today. It's me, myself, and I. I know, old joke, really corny. And that gets tightened to, I'm using the sheet that came with this kit, which is really great. As you can see here, it gives you all of your torque specs. That tensioner gets tightened. It came with a supplemental, you can see here, and it states that that bolt should have thread lock put on it and tightened to 19 foot-pounds. That's just my torque wrench turning on. Gotta find the short one. Okay. One more time for good measure. All right, now the idler tensioner on the other side, which goes right here, that gets torqued to 33 foot-pounds. Now that did come with a new bolt, and as you can see, it's got the thread locker pre on it, whereas the other one came off when I took the bolt off, so we're going to be using the new one today. Excuse the noise. Okay, 33 foot-pounds. Okay, and that is on. The next part of this story, we've got all the new pulleys, timing tensioner. Luckily with this, neither one of the cam gears moved, so everything is still lined up. So it's time to install the belt. Now sometimes, depending on if it's multi-cam or a single overhead cam, you'll have little paint lines on the outside of the belt that line up with these. This is not one of those belts, so that's not an issue here. When doing these, I try to install the belt on the crankshaft pulley first. Then I make my way up, pulling the tension out of the idler pulley. The reason I do that is because you're going to want to have the most amount of tension on the... keep saying that wrong. You want the slack in the belt over here. That's much better. I feel like Porky Pig sometimes. Bleep, 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 bleep. That's all, folks. Remember that when you're doing a timing belt, there is no reward for speed. The only reward you get is for accuracy. This is one of the hardest parts of doing a timing belt job like this. Sometimes you need to move the timing gears a little bit to take up slack, but you have to make sure that they go back to their alignment positions when the belt is fully installed. All right. Now what you want to do next, and this is what I really highly recommend, is hand crank it 2 full revolutions of the motor. By doing that, what you're going to do is you're going to be able to check without hurting anything, like starting it up with the crank, where if you're off, you're going to feel it in the crank. Most likely you'll never have an issue as long as all your points are lined up, but it's a good habit to get into. That's what I'm going to do right now. 2 full revolutions, and that'll tell me if everything's lined up. That's 1. And that is the end of 2. Now our bottom is lined up right now. So we want to recheck our tops to make sure that they're lined up. The one on here and the one over here. Everything looks lined up, so now all we have to do is do the reverse of everything you've just seen. The job of doing the timing belt on this 3.5 liter Honda, or sorry, not Honda, Acura, is done. If you got any questions, put them down below. I'll try to answer them. If you like what you've seen and enjoyed the content, please feel free to subscribe and hit the like button. It's really appreciated on my half, because that lets me know that you guys are enjoying what you see. Thanks and have a great day. I still have to sit here and put it all back together. Gotten her all back together, started it, run it through a heat cycle. Everything seems to be working really well now. Last but not least, got to put the little timing belt reminder sticker of when it was done and on what date. And what you're going to want to do is, a lot of people, I've seen them put them here, or they put them here. I like to put them on the body somewhere. And the reason why is because if any of this stuff gets replaced because of an accident, it goes with those pieces. And then suddenly, unless you've got a person that keeps really good records, they don't know when the last time the belt was done. That's why I chose to put it here today. I've already wiped it off with some wax and grease remover. That way I get a good adhesion. Fingers are a little greasy. I don't want to get that all over the new sticker. Okay. We have the sticker that it was done at 105, 136. And that's putting a timing belt in a 3.5 VTEC. Have a great day.